At the year of 1519, a group of expeditioners led by Hernan Cortes landed at present-day Veracruz. 2 years after, at 1521, the Aztec capital Tenochtitlan fell to the hand of the Spanish conquerors. As a landmark of the end of the Aztec Empire, it marks the beginning of 300 years of the colonial era over Mexico region. About 80 years later, at the end of 1600, East India Company, which later seized the hegemony over the entire East India until the 19th century, was formed in England. These two events both represented the beginning of the colonial era in the particular regions. Many historians only talk about economics, politics, and global influences when it comes to the topic of colonization. However, I wonder what colonialism brought to the locals. This is the reason why I would like to take us on a tour to see the people who live at the bottom of the population hierarchy. A bucket can hold much water does not depend on the longest plank, nor the average ones, but the shortest one. When we want to know the changes in welfare of local people in these regions under colonization, we should not just look at how does the bigwigs live, but the average or the poor. It appears the influences to the populace were different in these two regions. In Mexico, the influences from colonialism were more economical, but for East India, it focused more on the spiritual side. On the Indian side, the influences brought by the British on culture and traditional aspects are hard to evaluate. For instance, before the British ruling, there was a tradition of sati in India, which is immolating the wife as a human sacrifice when the husband dies. This was a tradition that violated Christian values, and as a result, it was banned by British governors. Even though the action of sati was completely volunteered, but this does not omit the truth of human sacrifice. This action of forbidding sati seems reasonable for us nowadays, but it really wasn't back then. Sati was a part of Indian culture, and outlawing sati actually created some conflicts. From the article, The Hazards of Interference by Andrea Major, it even listed sati as a possible reason for the uprising in 1857. Was the forbiddance improve the standard of living? I don't know. The action of banning sati for Indians back then was just like taking away Thanksgiving from Americans or taking Mid-Autumn from Chinese. Even though this is a bad metaphor, but what I'm trying to emphasize here is the consequences of taking away a tradition could be a huge negative impact on local culture, which will eventually reduce the welfare to the people living under the social pyramid. On the other hand, for the Mexicans, even though Mexico got independent from Spain in the 19th century, but the noxiousness from the colonial era kept poisoning the populace of Mexico. First of all, there was still a social hierarchy after the independence, which left no room for peasants and natives to increase their standard of living. Under Diaz's regime, by the end of 19th century and the beginning of 20th century, many peasants who lived near the U.S. and Mexico border decided to move to the U.S. legally or illegally for work opportunities. In fact, Diaz focused so much on industrialization that many campesinos or farmers in Mexico was forced to work on haciendas, which are large manors close to the borders. The campesinos were compelled to work in those haciendas in order to get vital supplies, and those supplies were transformed as debts to the farmers. These debts forced the farmers to keep working on the haciendas. Moreover, afterward, unfortunately, this debt would transfer to the children of the farmers when they could no longer work. Under this circumstance, it became impossible for the peasants to live above the poverty line, and it became even harder for them to climb to higher social hierarchy. In many aspects, colonization did not improve the standard of living of locals or natives, especially for the people who lived under the poverty line. There were indeed some improvements culturally, just like the forbiddance of sati. But during the time of colonial era, the result is the same for the poor. Empires need markets and cheap labors. As long as there was colonization by empires, the locals and the natives would be prevented from living happily.